Hi, I'm Aliyah Aziz, and you're watching A News Weekend. Here are the headlines. German Christmas market tragedy. At least 2 people have died and dozens injured as a car drove through a crowd. A day of mourning in Croatia after the tragic attack at primary school in Zagreb. Volunteers battled to clear spilled oil on Russia's Black Sea coast. The contaminated area includes more than 45 hectares of a protected nature reserve. At least 2 people have died, including a young child, and dozens of others sustained injuries as a car drove through a crowd in Germany's city of Magdeburg on Friday. Officials believe the incident was a deliberate attack and have since arrested the suspected driver, who they believe was acting alone.
This is the moment a car plowed through a crowd at a Christmas market in Germany's city of Magdeburg. The incident has killed at least 2 people and left almost 70 others injured. One of the people killed is a young child. Officials have detained the suspected driver, who they've identified as a 50-year-old man from Saudi Arabia, and believe it was a deliberate attack.
The perpetrator has been arrested. He entered the Federal Republic of Germany for the first time in 2006. He had a settlement permit and thus a permanent residence permit, and had last worked as a doctor in Bernburg. According to our current knowledge, he acted as a lone offender. There is no information about other perpetrators.
Locals who were present during the incident say they were alerted by the sound of sirens.
We were here in St. John's Church for a concert, and we heard the sirens and saw the blue lights. And of course it was so long and terrible that you had to suspect that something terrible had happened. It is a black day for Magdeburg in any case.
Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz says in a statement on social media that the reports he's received concerning the incident suggest something bad, and thanks the rescue workers for their response. Other statements from officials, including Germany's Foreign Minister and Interior Minister, have all expressed their condolences to the victims and pledged to stand with the people of Magdeburg. World leaders from France, Italy, Spain, and Poland have also reacted to the tragic incident and expressed their deep condolences to those affected. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen expressed similar remarks in statements on social media. This attack follows a similar incident in 2016 in Germany's capital, Berlin, where a truck driven by a failed Tunisian asylum seeker crashed into a crowded Christmas market, killing 12 people. The Magdeburg attack has prompted several other German towns to cancel their weekend Christmas markets as a precaution and out of solidarity for Magdeburg's loss. A memorial service is to take place in the Magdeburg City Cathedral.
In Croatia, a community mourns the tragic loss of a young life. Residents of Zagreb gathered for a vigil to honor a 7-year-old child killed in a brutal stabbing attack at a primary school.
A quiet vigil lit up the night as grieving residents placed lanterns and toys at the site of the horrific attack in Zagreb, Croatia. The tragedy unfolded when a 19-year-old former student entered the school, stabbing 5 people, including students and a teacher. The attack left a 7-year-old girl dead and injured 6 others. Authorities say the attacker injured himself during the incident and is now in custody. The motive remains unclear, but the shockwaves have left the community grappling with questions about safety in schools.
My 7-year-old niece is in the first classroom next door to where the attack happened. It could have been her. It could have been any child of ours. We must fight for the safety of children in schools and kindergartens. You send a child to school. It is safe, but is it really safe? If it was safe, we would not be here.
The tragedy has reignited discussions on school security in Croatia. As families mourn, they also call for urgent measures to prevent such horrors in the future.
The United Nations Security Council has extended its peacekeeping mission in the Golan Heights for another 6 months. This decision comes as tensions between Syria and Israel remain high. Israeli troops have moved into the demilitarized zone created after the 1973 Arab-Israeli War after the fall of Bashar al-Assad. Israeli officials have described the move as a limited and temporary measure to ensure the security of Israel's borders, but have not indicated when the troops might be withdrawn. The Security Council emphasized the importance of all parties adhering to the ceasefire terms to avoid escalating tensions. Officials warned that ongoing military activities in the zone pose risk of civilians and UN personnel. The UN warned Syria is unprepared for a large return of refugees. From December 8th, many Syrian refugees who previously fled to Turkey, Iraq, Jordan, and Lebanon started to return after opposition forces took control of the capital city, Damascus. In Geneva, International Organization for Migration Director General Amy Pope stated Syria is not ready to receive the refugees at the moment, pointing out that the country is unable to take a large scale of displaced civilians.
What we see on the ground is that if there are overwhelming numbers of people who go home now into what is an incredibly fragile situation, it will overwhelm the country and it could risk greater, more destructive impact on a very fragile peace process.
Still in Syria, we are getting more information about the notorious Senaya prison. A news special correspondent, Anna Nasser, takes a closer look at the prison, which has become synonymous with arbitrary detention, torture, and the murder of countless people.
Hello, everybody. This is Adnan Nasser with A News. I'm reporting to you live from Damascus, Syria.
What stands behind me is the infamous Senaya prison. For many years, innocent people were wrongly detained here, tortured, executed. Now, free for the public to roam around, for people to see and witness precisely the brutality of Assad's regime. The question is, what comes next? You can see these tiny little cell doors with numbers on them. The horrors that people had to endure for countless years. Take a look here. Shoes, detainees, civilians. We don't know what is to become of this place. The question is, what will become of Syria, the heart of the nation? For more, follow us at A News. This is Adnan Nasser.
For more in-depth coverage from Syria, please visit our website, anews.tv, and social networks. The U.S. Senate has passed a critical government funding bill avoiding a shutdown just before the holidays. The measure now heads to President Biden's desk for final approval. The Senate worked into the early hours, voting 85-11 to approve the spending legislation minutes after the midnight deadline. The bipartisan effort ensures continued government operations and prevents disruptions during the busy holiday season. The bill previously cleared the House with support from both parties and now awaits President Biden's signature. After initial challenges to an early bipartisan deal, lawmakers reached an agreement highlighting cooperation across party lines. Unrest in Seoul continues, now in favor of the impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. Thousands of supporters of South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol gathered in Seoul, calling for his impeachment to be overturned after he was removed from office nearly a week ago over a controversial martial law decree. Protesters voiced their anger and disappointment over the situation. South Korea's constitutional court will decide whether Yoon will be removed or reinstated. If he is ousted or resigns, a new election will take place within 60 days. Yoon caused shock on December 3rd when he granted the military emergency powers to combat, in quote, anti-state forces and political opponents, but later withdrew the decree. The president of France faces frustration and mounting criticism during his visit to Mayotte. Local residents are grappling with the devastating aftermath of Cyclone Chido, demanding more aid and attention from Emmanuel Macron's government.
The situation in Mayotte remains dire following Cyclone Chido. President Macron arrived in Mayotte on Thursday and was met with an angry reception in the city of Pamandzi. Residents shouted and booed, accusing the government of failing to respond promptly to the crisis. It's been more than 5 days since the cyclone struck. According to official reports, 31 people have lost their lives in Mayotte, France's poorest overseas territory. However, some local leaders fear the death toll could be in the thousands. Thousands of people remain trapped on the rubble, their homes completely destroyed. Heavy rains have hampered rescue operations, making many areas inaccessible. In Mayotte's capital, Vanuatu, some neighborhoods have been reduced to ruins. Aid distribution has been slow, leaving many in desperate need. Additionally, the government announced plans to increase the supply of food and water by air and sea. However, opposition politicians have accused the government of neglecting Mayotte, while local residents claim they have received no assistance since the cyclone hit. Earlier, a report from the French political group La France Insoumise has raised serious questions about President Emmanuel Macron's handling with the indigenous people of French overseas territories. The report specifically highlights alleged marginalization of the Kanak people of New Caledonia, accusations of neocolonialism and violent unrest following controversial government actions. LFI highlights blockades and violent clashes involving independence activists, militias and police in New Caledonia. It claims that 13 people died during the unrest, including at least 8 Kanak individuals allegedly killed by militias.
Our correspondent Ross Coulin has more on the French President Macron visit to Mayotte and challenges he faced there.
Emmanuel Macron has now wrapped up his trip to Mayotte, the French Indian Ocean territory that was devastated by Cyclone Chido 6 days ago, leading to huge damage across the island and a major loss of life. There have been lots of challenges for the French authorities in responding to the disaster, notably the remote location of Mayotte, which is a 10-hour flight from Paris and is located between Mozambique and Madagascar. The airport on the island suffered severe damage as a result of the cyclone, and so in the immediate aftermath of the disaster, only military aircraft and ships could access the island of Mayotte. Now, Paris has sent hundreds of firefighters, hundreds of rescue workers and hundreds of soldiers to the island to support the rescue and clean-up operation, but it has been problematic with roads blocked, fallen trees and also damage to the container port area. Now, the French president, when he toured the island and visited different communities in his 2-day trip across Mayotte, well, there was some controversy because video did emerge showing the president shouting and crowds shouting back at him, a confrontational approach from the French president, defending the actions of the French state, saying that the French authorities were ready for the disaster. People on Mayotte argued differently. We have also seen footage of the president being contrite, a quieter approach, listening, comforting some people who've lost their homes, very tactile as well, touching and hugging people to try to show support. So 2 different sides of the president's reactions to him meeting communities in Mayotte. The French leader has now departed the French Indian Ocean island and he is set to travel to Djibouti for the traditional Christmas meal that he holds with French troops who are serving overseas. Ross Cullen, A News in Paris.
Residents in Vanuatu are now living in tents after a deadly earthquake damaged their homes. Access to the country's capital, Port Vila, is restricted as search and rescue teams look for survivors in the rubble. Disruptions to power and communication hinder rescue efforts, while UNICEF says water contamination is a major concern.
The aftermath of a disaster. This is what some residents in Vanuatu's capital, Port Vila, are calling home after a 7.3 magnitude earthquake has damaged their houses. Fearing unsafety, they've turned to sleeping in tents.
because some of our houses is not safe anymore. Some of them houses, the wall fell off, the iron roof fell off. So that's why we all came here. We stay here for this time being until everything is finished, and then we can go back to our places.
International aid and emergency teams are responding to the catastrophic events, with Australia pledging its support. About 150 Australian tourists have been returned home from Vanuatu, with some reporting minor injuries.
We sat up on a hill for like 4 hours because they said normally a tsunami would come. But we are lucky. We all got out with a couple bruises, but people passed away. They said it's the worst one in 102 years.
At least 16 people have been killed by the earthquake, including 1 French and 2 Chinese nationals. Officials say they expect the death toll to rise as rescue efforts continue.
Azerbaijan is handed the chairmanship of the Organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation for the first half of 2025. It was announced at the 49th meeting of the Council of Ministers of Foreign Affairs held online. Deputy Foreign Minister of Azerbaijan, Yalchin Rafiev, represented the country at the meeting, which acknowledged Azerbaijan's growing influence with the global climate agenda. Delegates highlighted the country's significant contributions to climate financing and carbon market agreements, as showcased at the recent COP29 summit. The session concluded with the adoption of the meeting's protocol. Caspian countries extended the ban on commercial sturgeon fishing until next year to protect the region's unique aquatic resources. During the 8th session of the Caspian Sea Commission held in Astrakhan, Russia, Azerbaijan, Iran, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan agreed to allow sturgeon fishing only to research and reproduction purposes. No export quotas for 2025 were set. Restoration efforts are ongoing, with millions of young sturgeons released into the sea this year. Despite these measures, sturgeon populations remain far below their historic levels. To Russia now, where volunteers struggle to shovel tons of sticky oil from Russia's Black Sea coastline. Local media says the contaminated area included more than 45 hectares of a protected nature reserve.
Volunteers have been working to clean up a major oil spill along Russia's Black Sea coastline after 2 aging oil tankers were damaged in a storm earlier this week. Over 6,000 rescuers and volunteers are working to clean the area, with more than 33 tons of contaminated sand and soil collected. Around 9,200 metric tons of oil were spilled, with 40% estimated to have leaked.
I can't even imagine the scale of the disaster. I've never seen anything like this. I can't even really imagine it. It seems to me that nature will be affected for many decades to come.
Volunteers have been shoveling oil-soaked sand into sacks, while more tar continues to wash ashore. The disaster happened in an area that provides an important habitat for seabirds and dolphins, among the worst-hit locations in Napa, a popular tourist resort that is known for its golden, sandy beaches. The spill affected over 45 hectares of a protected nature reserve. Some 500 seabirds have been treated, but over 30 have died.
We've decided that we would concentrate on saving birds, considering them to be among the most affected in this emergency with the oil spill. So we are purposefully catching birds on the coast, those that we consider to be the most polluted, badly feeling, and in such a state that they are already on the verge of life and death. We bring them here, wash them from the oil, and provide medical support. So we are simply trying to save the birds.
The spill occurred in the Kerch Strait, which separates southern Russia from Crimea, which Moscow annexed from Ukraine in 2014. One tanker split in half, killing a crew member, and the other ran aground. The captains of the ships are now facing charges for violating maritime safety rules.
That's all we have for now from Baku. Thank you for tuning in and keep watching A News.